Hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello. It says my internet is not stable, so hopefully.
I got that message not too long ago, but then it cleared up. So
Switch.
I actually get it more in Teams than I do on Zoom, so for whatever it's worth. Why do I hear a clock ticking? Does anybody else hear that?
I hear it.
Hi, everyone.
Or a heartbeat?
Hi,
Hello, Dr. Perry.
how are you?
Hey, Dr. Perry.
Good.
We have a couple more minutes here till 6:30, and I don't think all the board members are present. So we'll just give it a few minutes before we officially start.
Hey, whatever that is, it's really loud. Does anybody hear it besides me and Jill? Do you hear the heartbeat?
I hear it. I'm going to mute, make sure it's not me.
I don't hear it at all.
I don't hear it.
I hear it, Hinda.
Now I
It
don't
might
get
be
it.
one of those. Is it one of those games where, like, if you're left-brained, you can hear it, but if you're right-brained, you can't?
Is it blue or is it gold?
So can you still hear it now that Jill is on mute? Okay.
Oh, wait, yeah.
Okay, so let me go on mute.
It's definitely Jill. It got louder when Jill came back.
Shoot, I don't even have a ticking clock in here.
I don't know. It's not, I mean, it's not that bad. It's not a deal breaker.
Once we get going and we're talking, hopefully.
Right. I think it's only the silence that's making it noticeable.
Oh, you know what? On the YouTube chat, somebody who's watching it live can hear the sound too. So
Huh.
I don't know where it's coming from. It's strange that I can't hear it.
So if we just all stay on mute.
Well, but if it's coming from me, I'm going to log out and try to log back in really quickly.
I don't hear it now.
Okay, never mind. I won't.
I was more just entertained than anything, honestly.
I like the pace of it. It's like
Yeah.
it's like a metronome.
Metronome, yeah.
Man, I wish I could hear it now.
Let me just reach out to a couple board members here to make sure that they're coming or not coming. It's a strange night for a meeting, but this is our inaugural one of this task committee. So
Jen, I can do it if that's easier.
it's okay.
Okay.
I'm in the process. You know, I just noticed that Daphne, Brian, and Matt are not on the invite, the link invite.
Really? Uh-oh. Jill, are you able to?
Yep, I'm gonna send it to them right now.
Okay, thank you. That would explain why they're not here. They probably don't even know.
That would make sense.
So Daphne was not planning on coming tonight, and I haven't heard from Brian or Matt yet. But keep in mind too that each board member has a chair and a vice chair. Burl and I are the chair. I'm the chair, and Burl's the vice chair of this committee. So not every board member needs to attend every committee meeting. They were divided up so that we wouldn't have to be at everything. So that's not necessarily the expectation. And obviously, since we're able to record it, they're able to go in and listen to the meeting afterwards, which I know they always do. So let's go ahead and get the meeting started. So I will call the meeting to order. It is 6:36 p.m. on December the 9th. This is the first time that this committee has met. So I welcome everybody that's here. Just quickly need to, just for housekeeping measures, we are on this Zoom chat. If you were either a staff member that's presenting or part of our COVID community task force, then you are invited to be a part of the panel, which I know Mrs. Elliott's going to introduce our task force members here as a part of her presentation. So we'll allow that to kind of take its course through the presentation. If you're watching on YouTube, we are monitoring the chat. Mrs. Pickle-Antonio is monitoring to see if there's any chat questions that you might have, and we will either do our best to answer them during this time that we have together or follow up with you with some specific information. I need to personally apologize and maybe also share a little bit of a public service message. I did have surgery for breast cancer yesterday. And so I am up and moving around, but it is just barely 24 hours. So I am going to try to hang in here for this entire meeting. But if I don't, Mrs. Pickle-Antonio will go ahead and close out the meeting. And so that's my my personal apology to all of you. And then if I don't make it through the meeting, but my public service announcement is, please don't let the pandemic stop you from getting screenings. Please make sure that you are taking care of your health, even though we are in the middle of a pandemic, and you're getting the appropriate screenings that you need, because let me be the first to tell you personally that it does indeed save lives. So that's my public service announcement for tonight. If you've learned anything else this evening, that's the one thing that I hope that you learn as you're watching. And with that, Mrs. Elliott, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Thank you to Jennifer. Thank you to everyone that's joining us this evening. We are excited to be here tonight to talk about the discussions our COVID Community Task Force has been engaged in over the course of the last month. And let's see if I can get this screen going. So after several months of navigating the COVID-19 pandemic, and unfortunately learning it was not going away as quickly as we would have liked to have seen it go away, the board asked us to create a COVID community task force just to help us with thinking through really important decisions for the district as a whole. And we're really thrilled with the diverse expertise of our task force members. It's made up of medical professionals, communication experts, legal representation, and of course our two board members that are with us this evening, Jennifer and Burl. And a couple of our task force members were able to join us this evening, so I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves. If you wouldn't mind sharing your name and just your affiliation with the district, as well as your professional field, and then I'll share a little bit about the other task force members. So Hinda, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm Hinda Mitchell with Inspire PR Group. I have both a personal and professional relationship with the district in providing communications and public relations support. And my role on the task force really is to assure that what we do as a task force and what the district does in responding to COVID-19, that we really enhance and improve and grow our communications with our school community. Oh, I also am the mom of two Gahanna grads.
That's right. Dr. Perry?
Yeah, my name is Mike Perry. I'm a pediatrician at Building Blocks Pediatrics, part of Central Ohio Primary Care. I lived in the district since 2000, have a daughter that graduated last year and a son that's going to graduate this year. My real goal is to make sure that we're paying attention to sensible reasoning and data to make our decisions and try to contribute what I can to the interpretation of that data for the task force.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. I'm going to try and get this the faces off of my screen. For some reason, it's not going away, and you're also able to see the screens, the faces on my screen. Let me just see really quickly. I'm going to stop sharing so that's not a distractor for everyone. I apologize for that.
It's not, Jill, it's not showing on the YouTube.
Okay.
It's working correctly.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Excellent then. So as well, along with Hinda and Dr. Perry, members of our task force also include Nicole Donosky, who is a legal representative from Bricker and Eckler. We also have three members from Franklin County Public Health that so far one of them have been able to join us. I do believe we will have Joe Mazzola with us next week at our meeting. Jeannie is the sustainability supervisor for Franklin County Public Health and also serves as a liaison between the health department and the school districts. Alex Jones is the assistant health commissioner, and Joe Mazzola is the health commissioner of Franklin County Public Health. Other community members that we're proud to be working with, Janet Zappi, who is from the field of diabetes and endocrinology, as well as Leah Brown, serving for the mental health field, and Dr. Rich Miller, who serves as a pharmacologist and is on the pharmacology board. So we have a well-versed group of individuals on our task force that we are really appreciative to have to vet ideas and process the data here in Gahanna. So in working through, the ongoing concerns and difficulties related to operating school in a pandemic, our goal has really been to be deliberative and thoughtful and informed when making decisions for our school community. The situation has been challenging to navigate. We have had some components of our plan that have been very successful. We've had other components of our plan that have not gone the way that we would have liked them to have gone. And so we're grateful to have this task force that brings both the professional expertise and the parental perspectives to the table to help us with the purpose of this task force, which is stated in the gray box, to review district data, to discuss our COVID-19 practices and protocols, and then to provide feedback and recommendations for our district's pandemic plans moving forward. So I'm going to be going through slides that our task force has taken a look at. I also have made some updates, so I'll be sharing some new information as well. The next couple of slides really just outline some of the structure for our task force so that the rest of our community understands. Our task force is meeting twice a month, the first and third Wednesday of each month. Our schedule's been a little off because of the holidays, but we have a meeting next week, and then once we have the organizational meeting in January, we'll be back on track. We do meet virtually with the exception of one of our meetings, which we'll talk about a little bit later, which involved some visits just to 3 of our school buildings. And we really take a look at data. We'll be looking at updates from Franklin County Public Health as appropriate, and then working through various discussion topics, which we'll kind of highlight some of those at the end of the presentation. So, as most groups do, we started with some norms, some of the traditional norms that you would see. I want to call attention though to the last 2, certainly keeping safety and maximize student learning at the forefront of our discussions and recommendations is a priority for us, as well as considering ideas and topics from multiple perspectives. We know that this situation brings a lot of emotion, and each of us on the task force comes to the group with different experiences, different opinions, different beliefs, different research bases. And so it's really important for us as a committee, and I think that the task force has been fantastic of making sure we're considering all viewpoints. We know that there are beliefs about where we should be and how we should operate that span a wide spectrum of possibilities. And so it's really important that we are considering all perspectives as we are navigating this pandemic. As a task force, we have 4 different types of data that we have looked at, and we've really only been able to look at data at one meeting thus far, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But that data includes the staff and student positive COVID-19 cases and quarantines, our staff absence fill rates, as well as the local, county, and state COVID data. And recently, in the last several weeks, we've been partnering with OSU, and we have some CATS data that we'll talk a little bit about as well. So those are the 4 data points that we have been taking a look at thus far. These next 2 slides will look familiar to task force members, but they do have updated numbers on them. The staff and student positive case and quarantine numbers look very different on this slide as compared to the next slide. So this slide shows our positive student cases, our quarantine student cases, as well as staff positive and quarantine cases for the 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving break. And so if you take a look at that data and how it calculates over the course of those 2 weeks, you notice that 41 students that were positive and 12 staff members. I mean, those are high numbers. Those quarantine numbers really are impactful in the school district for sure. So over a 2-week period, we were at exactly 800 students that had been put into quarantine and 87 staff members. If you take a look at the next slide, this shows the most recent 10 days since Thanksgiving break. And you'll know that's when we had our transition back to remote learning, which we will talk about in just a little bit. But this shows the student positive data being at 17 with staff at 11 and student quarantine at 90 staff quarantine at 27. Again, this is only the 10 days since we have been back from Thanksgiving break, so it's not a full 2-week period. But this is important data for us to continue to visit and monitor, because it definitely impacts our operations greatly. I will say, being in remote learning currently, we have encouraged families to continue to notify us, and that's how we're tracking information. However, we know that this is probably not complete data, because there may be instances where, because students, all students aren't coming into the buildings, we may not be fully notified of those instances. But I still think, the 90 students in quarantine and 27 staff members, that's still pretty high for us. This next data set shows, again, the 2 weeks prior to Thanksgiving break, and then this most recent 10 days after Thanksgiving break, and just our fill rates. And as you can imagine, prior to Thanksgiving break, when we were, nearing 90 staff members in quarantine, that poses a huge staffing challenge for us. And there's a lot of factors that go into fill rates. We traditionally are in the low 90s, just on a typical year. That's our average for fill rates. And you can see from the 2 weeks prior that we were, consistently lower than that, and even, below 80% and lower for quite some time. Taking a look at where we are now, those fill rates are back up. And to provide some context for that, one of the things we've tried to be committed to is, when we have staff members going on quarantine, if they're asymptomatic or if they're well enough to continue teaching, and that's something we work through with them, then we want them to be able to continue teaching, because we know our teachers is what's best for our students. The struggle, though, is that while a teacher is at home on quarantine, is streaming into the classroom and teaching, that still requires us to have coverage in the physical classroom with students that are in our buildings. And so that's where we're really struggling we were really struggling with those quarantine numbers and our staff fill rates being so low. So now that we're in remote, even teachers that are on quarantine are able to continue teaching if they're well enough, but we don't have that huge burden of that coverage in the classroom.
Hey, Jill.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it occurs to me that absence fill rate is probably a jargony term for education, and maybe we need to sort of drill down. I think it sort of becomes obvious as you talk about it, but maybe we just need to talk about actually what that means and how we measure that.
Sure. So these numbers are taken directly from our absence information system. And essentially, it's the percentage of teacher or of staff absences that we were able to have filled with a substitute. And so you can then kind of take a look at how those percentages would impact. And, even on some of our higher days, the 18th of November was at 81%. Even on those days, it's a shuffle in the morning. It's, who can cover this class and how can we get this period covered? And, we are pulling, principals are teaching classes, and our reading teachers are, not serving students so that they can fill in. I think one day in particular, I know the high school had, over 100 classes, like individual class periods, that were not covered. And so, that poses a big challenge for Mrs. Williams at the beginning of the day. So does that help, Hinda? Great. So this next set of data is, takes a look at county and statewide data. This is updated data as of today. Mr. Barrett actually helped pull this. When we looked at this data together at the beginning of November as a task force, the county positivity rate was at 8.5%. And the data that Mr. Barrett received in his superintendent's call just yesterday was, that our county positivity rate is up to 19.6%. This also outlines county cases per 100,000 And then, these are probably data points that, you've seen in the news outlets and such, but, it just shows the growing numbers in our area that we are watching and monitoring. So these next couple slides show that CATS data I had referenced at the beginning. And this is a partnership with Ohio State University's College of Public Health, as well as a partnership they have with Franklin County Public Health and Columbus Public Health. There are 18 school districts participating in this partnership at this time, and it allows us to take a look at various data sets. These particular charts show our case rate models. And so, you can take a look at this data and see where we fall in comparison to some of our other local school districts based on case rate. This is data that we just received as of last Friday. This data is calculated every Thursday, and then Mr. Barrett shares it out with us as soon as he gets it. And so these are updated numbers. This next slide specifically shows Gahanna Jefferson, and kind of you can look at our trends and how this data has flushed out over the last several months. The data that CATS provides to us also pulls information from our student information system, Infinite Campus, and our absence reporting system, ASAP. And so there are a variety of reports that that CATS provides to us, and we are, very close, I think, to being able to share more specific data through, a new microsite that we are working on. But we're going to be having some conversations with the task force and in our internal teams related to the best way to display that data. So this slide, we won't spend a ton of time on, but this is early on the county alert levels that were released and the alignment that we as in a district had created early regarding our learning models. I was able to double check. We've had a couple iterations of this chart, and I confirmed with Judy Hengstebeck earlier today that this was the final one that we had landed on. But one of the things that's important for us to remember is that data changes, information changes. And so, the ways that we had originally outlined our learning models aligned to the alert levels are not necessarily what, we know is best at the current point in time. So the next few slides actually outline a series of decision trees or decision matrices that local school districts have started to implement. We do not currently have one just yet, but that is something that we talked about initially in one of our first task force meeting. And we'll be having more discussions coming up about, how a decision tree or matrix might help us with future decisions. So we're not going to spend too much time, but I have 4 districts that I've pulled these decision trees from. This is Bexley's. You notice Hilliard's. All of them include data related to the case rate per 100,000. That's a common theme. But then there are additional thresholds that have been set to kind of help dictate what the learning model might look like within those districts. This is Dublin's. They have case rates per 100,000 and then some additional mitigation strategies that they've, kind of outlined how many of those need to be met in order for a learning model shift. And then lastly here, I believe Grandview Heights' decision tree outlines some similar information to Dublin's that we just saw. So the information I just went through is a lot of the information we talked about, looked at in our first task force meeting. Our second task force meeting involved visits to 3 of our school buildings. And prior to the visits to the school buildings, we had shared our health and safety guidance document with all of the task force members. This is a living document that we update regularly, and we highlight changes for staff members so that they're really cued into any new information that we have from the local health departments. So our task force members had an opportunity to review that document. So they had some things to be looking for, as we visited the buildings. Burl, do you have something? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought your hand was up. I am going to just highlight the buildings and what we were able to see, and then I'll open it up to, anyone that would like to, maybe share a perspective or what you saw within the buildings as we visited. We got to see an elementary school, a middle school, and the high school. We were able to take a look at lunch, recess, and, classroom interactions at the elementary school. At the middle school, we were able to see lunch and classrooms, and actually they were finishing up some recess as we were walking over also. And then at the high school, we were able to see lunch in action. In fact, it was so quiet and calm in there that at first I thought it was study hall. We were able to pop into an elective class, see study hall, classrooms, and then also witnessed a class change at the end. So I'm going to pause there and see if Hinda or Dr. Perry or Jennifer or Burl, if any of you, maybe want to add any insights about the things that you saw when we were in our buildings.
I was most impressed with the rule following of the kids, and the rate of mask wearing and properly wearing the masks was way beyond what I expected to see. I only went to the elementary and middle school. I did not attend the high school visit, but I was impressed at the measures that were taken and the compliance of the kids. And I think that probably shows good reason why the spread within the school hasn't been bad. So I was pleased with what I saw.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to add my own thoughts, but I would just say I think that was the most frequent comment from the other task force members who were touring the buildings too. Just being impressed and pleasantly surprised, I guess, by the compliance, especially with the kids, especially when you think about elementary kids. At lunchtime and at recess time.
Yeah, the kids were great, but I also I want to just, flag the staff and the teachers both who I think were, sort of chasing behind these kids and wrestling to clean and sanitize. And I just think it was a clear team effort, but, honestly, a lot of us grown-ups could learn some things from how easily and accommodating the kids and teachers managed to make this work. If they can, we surely can.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if, at any point in time in our hybrid model, visitors were to come in, they would definitely see consistent social distancing in classrooms. I mean, our desks are very intentionally placed to allow for that social distancing. We also have implemented one-way hallways in some buildings. We got to witness a school custodian busting his tail to, get those tables cleaned in between those lunch periods, and had some good discussion about the products we're using for cleaning and sanitization. And so I think it was, just a great opportunity for the task force to get in and, see these things in action.
Yeah, I was really impressed with what our teachers, principals, custodians did as well. I mean, we had seen it before the task force obviously came in, but we really didn't know what the task force might say. Certainly the things we worried about over the summer, younger kids, kindergartners wearing masks, we thought that would be really, really hard. But our teachers, I think, did a lot of modeling and a lot of, they give a mask break. So, I mean, there is a very intentional effort. It's very earnest, and it shows that we can run school safely with in our hybrid model. I talked to one teacher on our visit. She had, 8 kids in one hybrid group and 8 in the other. And so it was also instructionally, a good opportunity to cover a lot of ground with kids when you have, a third of the kids you would normally have.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes half, but in her case, it was a third.
And I thank you, Mr. Barrett. And I see that Janet and Leah were able to join us. I'm not going to put you on the spot. We are doing a little bit of sharing about the school visits, but I will share with the community that Janet did her homework, and she read that health and safety document, and she sent us, several questions ahead of time that we were able to process on the visit. And so I really appreciated, the task force kind of, putting us through the ringer and asking us questions and making sure that we had plans in place to keep our kids safe. So I'm not sure, Janet or Leah, if you guys would like to add anything before we move on about the visits. Like I said, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Well, I will just tell you, and I'm sorry I'm late. Just getting home from work. I was impressed with the visits. And I hope that my questions came across, you don't know me, but they came across not accusatory or anything. Sometimes I can be pretty direct, but I just like, what about this? What about that? And so I appreciate the fact that you actually looked at them and made it a point. Hey, did you notice this or that? As a task force member, I really appreciated that. And I felt like really all my concerns were addressed satisfactory, and I just want to try to figure out how to get the kids back in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Okay, so this next slide just kind of addresses our learning model transition to full distance learning. And that's, the topic of transitioning back to full distance learning was discussed in a third meeting. And, a couple of the things to just highlight, though the timing aligned very closely, it's important for us to note, and I know the task force discussed the fact that, this transition was not dictated by the alert level changing to purple or our ability to operate safely at schools. I mean, we were able to see safe teaching and learning happening in our building visits. However, the growing quarantine and positive cases among staff and students was a driving force, as well as the difficulty with staffing the learning model and finding substitutes at all levels. And so I'm not sure, Mr. Barrett, if you want to add anything. I know we talked a little bit before the meeting related to this transition. We all share the same feelings as you, Janet, about, working hard to get our kids back in our buildings. I think you're on mute.
I'm on mute, sorry. One of the things we talked with the task force about, and, that has, I would say, changed with the Ohio Department of Health, Franklin County Public Health, the notion that everybody's on remote and it's an automatic if we're on purple. The fact is, us going on remote had less to do with being on purple than it did having 800 kids in quarantine and 87 teachers on quarantine and an inability to staff, our buildings in a productive way. So when kids were having, a teacher that was either a substitute or maybe a reading teacher or a counselor or a principal and not versed in the content, it became, I think, less productive instructionally and educationally. And so I think if somebody asked, could we be in school on purple, I would say that would be, we would discuss that, and it would be a lot of intentional and deliberative thought about it, but I think it is possible. Because I think our the layering approach that we're putting in place with, social distancing, with masks, with hand sanitizing, and following those things to a T, You know, I read something recently, it was the Swiss cheese approach, you know, that we're putting multiple layers on things so that we can block the holes in the system. And so I think, you know, obviously the numbers are high right now. 19% is quite high in terms of a positivity rate. Yesterday, the numbers were, I think, were 25,000, but that was just a factor of adjusting to the new CDC guidelines under antigen testing. So they had a backlog of 12,500 cases that they added to the number, but we've had close to 10,000 cases a day running. So we're fully intended to bring kids and teachers back on January 5th. And so we're with you, Janet. We definitely want to get kids back in school. And we believe we can even do it on purple if that's where our county is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, so our last slide for the evening just kind of outlines what's next for our task force. We certainly will continue reviewing COVID data, trends, and recommendations, as well as you know, taking a look at updated guidance, because we know that there are some updates coming our way related to quarantine periods, and so, you know, taking a look at how that will impact the numbers that play into our decisions. We will be reviewing newly created flowcharts related to COVID-19 confirmed cases and exposure. We know that communication is something that we're continuing to work on. What is the best way to get information in the, you know, clearest, most concise manner? And one of the requests that actually came from the task force as we were processing at one of our schools on a visit was, you know, a more clearly defined process for parents and staff related to what happens when you have a student on quarantine, what happens when you have someone in your family that has a confirmed positive case, and just kind of what that trickle down looks like. And so with the help of Sue Wigging, our special education director, who oversees our nursing department and has been instrumental in you know, the processes and procedures we have in place for safety, as well as Judy Hengstebeck. We have some new flow charts for the task force to take a look at to, you know, help us to decide, is this the information families are needing? Is it going to be helpful? Is it clear? So we'll be taking a look at that. We also will have more further discussions related to a GJPS decision matrix related to learning models, and you know, be discussing related information or available information regarding, you know, vaccines that I know we're all, you know, watching closely. So with, you know, I have nothing further related to presentation. Burl, I'm not sure if there are any questions that have come through on the YouTube link, or if any other task force members, you know, have anything else to share, or any other questions, to pose. Hopefully this gave, you know, an overview of the task force coming together and some of the things that we've been discussing thus far.
There are no questions in the chat. Just, I don't know if now's the right time or not, but just for housekeeping purposes, we do not yet have a place on the committee page on the website for the COVID committee. So the agenda, I don't think, was up anywhere.
So based on conversations, we actually had a meeting today with Hinda and Judy, okay, and additional support personnel, and the information, I believe Judy had said, was actually on the Student Learning and Achievement Committee meeting page, since this committee replaced that. But we're going to be working on having a specific place for task force and committee information in the new microsite.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I was just going to note, I don't think, I mean, I wouldn't have expected to have it. I know this is our very first meeting of this committee. I wouldn't necessarily have expected a whole lot of participation at this first meeting, but hopefully once we get going and the communication picks up, we'll have some more community engagement, because I am certain that there's a lot of community members with questions, who want to have a better understanding of how decisions are being made. So
maybe I have a couple questions. So just can you just go over I know, and I want to thank you for, from the administration point of view, for listening to some of the comments in both the first and the second task force meeting relative to communication and getting communication out to both staff members and families. And we know you're working on a specific microsite for the specific to the Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools and our response to COVID. Can you give us a time frame as to when you think that site will be launched?
Yeah,
Yep. The answer is we just, I think, finalized our site map today. We're working on content. We're still hoping for mid-January. That's our target. The holidays are not helping with finding the vendors we need to build it, but we're getting there. So yeah, I think we're on target for a mid-January introduction of the site, and we're working on, and I think as we get some of the pieces together, we'll have a more defined opportunity. But a lot of it really involved spending the time to make sure that the structure of the site was right, and that then when everything is said and done, that site really will be the clearinghouse where when somebody has a question, the answers will be there. That will be the leading place for updates. If you want to know about athletics, if you want to know about extracurriculars, if you want to know about food service, if you want to know about the decision trees, if you want to see the CATS data, it's all going to be there and really well laid out in a very specific manner.
Yeah, and it'll all
be.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, I think that's great, because I think one of the things we might want to do also then between now and mid-January, because we go back to school prior then to the launch of the microsite. So, and I understand the holidays and the vendor situation as well, is we might want to make sure we have a targeted set of communications, even the video of the tour that we took. I know Judy was taking some video when we were at the school, and there's some other video of the safety measures. I just think to be able to get the community to understand what it was that we saw that day on those tours. I had no idea specifically what we were going to walk into, and at each different building level was just so impressed with, as Dr. Perry said, the level of compliance from the kids, but also the actual facilitation of safe working environments for both teachers and kids, and to make sure that people are seeing that. And then also, as we look at these numbers, to be sure that we're communicating the fact that while we do have an issue of fill rate, which is the absentee rate for teachers, because we need to have teachers in buildings in order to teach effectively, we are not seeing spread in the school. And I think while those numbers that we saw in the beginning of the presentation were so high, and Dr. Perry can correct me if I'm wrong, what those numbers also though tell us so far is that we have such a large body of students that are actually testing positive, and then a larger body quarantine, but we're not seeing positives out of those quarantines. So I think that's how you track spread within the school, which is not what we're seeing, which I think is an important statistic.
Right.
Yeah, Jennifer, that's a really great point. We definitely are not seeing the spread within our school buildings. We have had some athletic teams that have dealt with some widespread quarantine shutdown experiences with, a few kids that have been positive, but definitely in our schools, the positive cases are mainly coming from outside our school buildings.
Jill, I appreciate that you made it clear that the initial decision tree linking purple to distance learning was an old effort at our decision matrix, and that's been revised and continuing to be revised. I think that, yes, what Jen said is very true. And the fact that spread is not being seen to occur within the school setting is going to be an important contributor to our next decision matrix. At least that will be one of the important factors to go into it. Now, a decision matrix is really hard to make because, as we already learned, things change and interpretation of data and understanding of occurrences changes. So decision matrix might not even last very long. Certainly our last one didn't, but that's going to be our charge, is to figure out how to put together that decision matrix the most sensible way. But no, you're absolutely right. I think, and we'll have more data from public health coming continually. If we see that spread in the school is still not occurring, I think that's a really positive reinforcement for all the actions that have been taken within the schools to prevent the spread. And they're doing a great job.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Perry, you make a good point. I just had a call this morning with several other local assistant superintendents, and one was referencing their decision tree and how it's really tricky because, you know, when you put it out there and then it kind of puts you in a box when you have new information and, you know, don't feel like it's the best thing to follow. But I think to, you know, take a look at multiple factors to help make those decisions is really important for us to kind of outline. So to the best of our ability, people know what to expect. But knowing that we might have to make changes and revisit it several times along the way.
And I think it's important that we keep backing it up with the current science, which, as you said, is evolving. And never forget the emotional response to COVID, right? We love our kids, we're scared for our kids, our teachers, but the reality is school is one of the safest places for people to be because they're wearing masks. So I think if we can blend that science, and as Dr. Perry said, as it evolves, that we are, you know, we're staying current. And I think that's super important. Is the decision matrix part of that program you had through Ohio State? Because that was really fascinating. And I thought that was really, cool.
So the schools that chose to do a decision matrix, they use the data from Ohio State to build their matrix. And it often, as Dr. Perry said, it had to be adjusted. But at least it was an attempt to try to say, if we do these things, here's what we're going to try to do in terms of going back to school. And so it'll be good for us as the task force to discuss if there's a value in doing that. Even if we have to adjust it, like Dr. Perry said, it might give us a sense. And I think it's better to make one now because folks were making them before we knew the things we know now. So, you know, we didn't know the spread in school was you know, as limited as we've seen. And I mean, you don't want any student or child or teacher to get COVID-19, but much of the spread, as we're seeing, and FCPH and ODH is pointing out, it's happening outside of schools.
And in fact, Franklin County Public Health walked back their guidance, right? They had originally said purple, you're remote, and they even said stay in your current learning mode.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about with the decision tree to try to account for the fact that things change so often is that we discussed the idea of the tree not telling us what an outcome was, but the tree telling us these are the factors that would trigger a deeper discussion. Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
So that at least people know what factors are being considered.
That's right.
And when a discussion might be taking place, even if they don't necessarily know,
right,
nor do we, what the outcome of that discussion is.
And most people aren't thinking about the staffing issue and the cleaning folks and our kitchen people and the bus drivers. So I think that's another very important part that people understand and that we are able to communicate, that we are not, because the people are going to be, you know, upset. Why are you going back in? They have to understand that the pullout wasn't a safety issue as far as health. It was a quality learning issue and adequate support people. And I think that's an important part that we have to continue to make sure our community understands.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is Leah. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So sorry, I have a lot of distractions around me. So I apologize for joining late. And I'm trying to get caught up to speed. I know I missed about a half hour, but I just want to point out, and maybe this has been discussed, but I think I hear, not just in Gahanna, but elsewhere, you read in the news and you hear different, case reports about, how dangerous this is for children, the isolation and what they're not getting. I mean, truly, they are the ones that are suffering the most. So my only comment and concern is just, I know we have to run the schools and staffing is of course important, but I don't know, I kind of feel there's just not enough emphasis. And again, not within Gahanna, but outside of Gahanna on the detriment that this is doing to children. And there has to, to me, the main priority has to be to get them back in school. They're really suffering emotionally, educationally, emotionally, it's hard. And so that's all. I just don't sense enough emphasis on that being how important that is. So that's all.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thanks, Leah. That's a really important part for us to continue revisiting and keeping at the forefront, for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we'll just check one more time. Is there any other comments in the chat? Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, so I think we're learning remotely. We're going into a holiday season and winter break. I expect that as we continue to meet, both as a task force and as the board committee, we're going to have more engagement from people who are going to be curious about and concerned about what we're doing as we move into the month of January and then kind of continue to proceed throughout the winter. So I think that we will get a lot more questions and a lot more participation as we move on. I just want to thank everybody for their participation this evening. And if there's no further reports out to the community or to the board, then I think we'll be ready to have our next community task force meeting here next week. Is that right, Jill? Next Wednesday, yes. And with that, if there's no other comments from the committee, I will go ahead and adjourn the meeting.
Can I ask one quick question? What
Sure,
time is that? What time is that meeting? Is it back at the noon or are we on the evening?
Yes, it's our back at the noon. Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome.
So just for clarification, so the task force itself will meet, we've had a disruption because of the holidays, both in November and December, but we will normally meet the first and third Wednesday of every month at noon and virtually until we can do otherwise. This is the monthly board meeting where this is really an opportunity to report out to the community and to the board the work of the task force. So this was our introductory meeting, and we've invited any task force members who want to participate as a part of the panel for the board to participate in these monthly meetings. So this is live on YouTube, and people are able to watch it live stream. They're able to ask questions, and they're also able to revisit it at some point in the future if they want to go back and see what the task force is doing for an update. So this was sort of a synopsis of our work over the last few weeks, and any thoughts or typically we'll have people ask questions, board members might ask questions as we continue to gain more information and we make more recommendations moving forward. I imagine when we have a proposed decision tree or some form of a tree, there'll be a lot of questions about that, but it's just an opportunity, I think, to let the community know what it is we're doing, be very transparent about who we are and what we're working on, and making sure that we're answering any questions that are out there.
Absolutely.
Okay, so with that, I will go ahead, and if there's no other questions or comments, okay, no other issues in the chat. Thank everybody. I'm gonna go lie down for a while, and and so it's 7:26, and I will adjourn this meeting.
Thanks everyone.
Everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Be well, Jen.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks.